Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a paid advertising. TheOnlyGround.com, onlyground.com is one of the most amazing places for information that I consistently go to. If you guys want to have conversations about our old interviews or even topics that we don't discuss, the group of people that are on the onlyground.com message boards are some of the most brilliant that I have ever come across. Those little like knick-knack facts that we get here and there, that's where a lot of it comes from. Please check out the link in the bio.
Welcome to the Lights Out Podcast. This is Chris Lights Out Lytle, and this is our journey to document the history of mixed martial arts. I have brought with me my friend, the MMA detective Mike Davis, and together we will preserve the history and hear some great stories from the world in the era of the no holds barred. Thank you and enjoy.
Welcome back to the MMA History Podcast. I am Joey Venti. I'm here with the host of the show, Mike Davis. He is the MMA detective. I am Herb Dean's dog sitter, and we have a special episode for you today. Today's guest is an Abu Dhabi world champion, a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu world champion, and undefeated MMA fighter. He is America's Jiu Jitsu superhero. Welcome to the show, Robert Drysdale. Good to have you, buddy.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for the kind words.
All right, speaking of kind words, wait, Robert, let's plug your stuff first off. It's what you got going on is very unique, and I got a ton of respect for it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. Well, I own a school in Las Vegas. It is 17 years old. I've been in Las Vegas for that long. I'm here, so if you guys are ever in Vegas, you want to do some training, I have an open door policy. You can welcome to come. You're welcome to go. All affiliations welcome. I'd love to have you guys come visit. I've also written 2 books on the history of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. One of them is called Opening Closed Guard, right? It's a story about a documentary that I'm still working on. We can talk about that if you guys want. It's a very long story. So it's a story about the film and my discovery of the history of Jiu-Jitsu. So it talks a little bit, but it's mostly about my discovery of the introduction of my acquaintance, I should say, with the introduction of judo in Brazil and the relationship the Gracie family had with judo and how it evolved in Brazil. My second book, it kind of complements the first. It's a later period and the role that Rickson Gracie had into shaping what we call Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu today, the role that he played, that was severely underestimated and understudied, perhaps, not acknowledged. The man had a massive role in shaping what we call Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu today. I argue for that. Some people don't like to hear that. It goes against traditional dogma, but I'm willing to argue for it. And I'm working on a third book now. So be busy.
Okay. So Joey, here's the question. So you wrote historical pieces about jiu-jitsu. Has it burned any bridges for you, these books?
I think that it's funny, man, because you don't know how many enemies you make, because the thing about enemies is that they act in silence. They are never to your face. They're never explicit. They play politics. They're working against you, but they're not. It's not explicit. What I do know is that I made a lot of good friends, and I wouldn't trade the enemies I don't know for the friends that I made. I will say this though. I think not just the book, but my demeanor and how I position myself in the jiu-jitsu sphere, that has definitely created a lot of problems for me. Doors definitely start opening the past, I'd say the last 5-7 years, where I was requested to teach a seminar a week, and now maybe I'll get a seminar every 2 months. I get paid less people show. I mean, I get older too, so I understand there's all that. But I also think there's an element of stay away from this guy. Not mostly from people that don't know me and haven't read my books, but most people, they're not going to read your books and not get to know you. So I think some doors have definitely closed in that regard.
Okay, just so everybody kind of understands where that question comes from. I've read both of his books, and the mind-blowing things that don't come from you, but come from the people you interview.
Yeah.
You mean, so it's it's twofold. Is there controversial things being said? For sure. Yeah. Are they coming from you? No, they're not.
Yeah.
So what like I got turned on to you and your books because I like me and Joey, we're MMA guys, like through and through. Like in terms of like jujitsu, on a scale of 1 to 10 for MMA, I'm like at a 10, like the highest degree you can get. In terms of jujitsu, I'm like a 6.5. Like there's some real basic things that you could trip me up on, and I'm not going to pretend that's not the truth. So the people that have turned us onto your books are Draculino and Jeff Neal. And Jeff Neal is one of Carlson Gracie's, he might be Carlson Gracie's first American black belt. And those guys, like in our interviews, sang your praises. And it was kind of triggered by some of the questions that we had. Like I was completely unaware of your body of work other than who you were. But like your books are so well written. There's no spelling errors. Grammar's perfect. Like sometimes you read these independent books, you know, you kind of got to put some things by the wayside due to the fact that, you know, it's kind of self-published. You spent money and time on these things like I've never seen before on a book published by somebody within the sport.
Well, thank you, man. That means a lot. I did put in a lot of time into actually the first book. First of all, I'm just like backtrack a little bit. I don't mind giving myself credit for what I did do. I just don't want to take credit for things that I did not do. The heavy lifting when it comes to research was done by Roberto Pedreira. Shocky Volume 1, 2, and 3, Craze Volume 1, 2, and 3. He's got some other books out. I highly recommend. They're dense reads, very, very information rich. And a lot of when it comes to the research, the heavy lifting, I've done some, but most of the heavy lifting was done by him. I was also very influenced by José Tufik Cairo's dissertation about the history of jiu-jitsu. So, you know, I don't, you know, I got to give these guys credit. I did some research. There's some findings that are mine, not many, but some. A lot of the conclusions are mine, I should say. But again, like not without the help and influence of Roberto Pedreira primarily. So I always like to give him credit because he really deserves it.
A lot of those books are written in Portuguese.
No, they're English.
No? Are they in English?
Yeah, he's American. He uses a pseudonym. Yeah, okay. He's an American. And so yeah, his books are not. Brazilians are the ones that don't know about them. They're accessible on Amazon if you're interested. But they're heavy reads. I'm just letting you know. They're very dense. And when it comes to my first book, I wrote it during lockdown, so it came out of me pretty easily, and it just proves a point that for you to write, you got to be quiet and alone. So during lockdown, I had nothing to do. I wrote that first book in like 2-3 weeks. It was very fast.
Shocking to me. That's shocking to me.
It was very fast. I had help. I did not do it alone. My editor, Scott Burr, was outstanding in terms of editing. He went above and beyond his job as an editor. And, you know, I really think he improved on the book.
And then the read, you guys also have they're both on audio book as well, which is not real cost effective from what I hear. I heard it's very expensive.
No, I got it cheap, man. I recommend. I got a guy. If you need someone, he did a great job. He's a musician, actually. I've never done an audiobook, but said, Rob, I'll charge you very little, but if you're willing to give me a shot, I'm like, I'm a cheap person, you know, what could go wrong, you know? And this is one of those cheap things that turned out to be cheap and not expensive. So he did a phenomenal job with the audiobook. His name is Steve. Yeah. And then the second book, I edited with my girlfriend and a friend, right? And Patricia and Jen. So they were phenomenal when it comes to, and they're not editors, but they're like, Rob, we're going to keep reading this with you until we get it right. You know, so the second one was a little more work because I didn't have a professional editor. So that was not something I want to do again. It's very difficult to edit your own work. Yeah. And but it worked out at the end.
So, Joey, when we were interviewing Draculino, the couple of the jiu-jitsu names that I don't think get enough credit, I mean, is Paquetá and George Medi.
Yeah.
So we were kind of hammering Paquetá, who's, you know, the original Fight Finder and YouTube for jiu-jitsu matches. We were really digging into both of those names with Draculino, and he goes, "Oh, you must have read Robert Drysdale's books." And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Because it's like there's so little on those two guys. And then I get your audiobook and I'm like, oh my God, these are the answers I've been looking for. It was good. It was really good stuff.
Yeah. And if you listen to, I mean, if you understand Portuguese, if you go to Portal do Vale Tudo, which is Marcelo Alonso's channel, he's been interviewing these guys for like 2 decades. And the funny thing is like the fact that no one in the United States has heard of Carlson Gracie or barely knows anything about him. It goes to show like how powerful the power of marketing, right? Because if you go to Copacabana, there's a statue of Carlson Gracie in Copacabana. Like he's very well known. If you go to Copacabana,
do a handshake with
of course. Yeah. I was just there. I'll send you the picture. You know, I mean, he's very well known. Brazilians, like people in Rio de Janeiro, especially the old school guys, I didn't say anything that these guys had not been saying for the past 30, 40 years. They're just like, okay, it's beneficial to jiu-jitsu that everyone's, you know, believing this, and that, but that's not what happened. Like, so I'm just repeating. I was basically repeating what these guys have been saying for 3 decades. I got 2 kinds. I know you want to jump in. Just want to finish before I forget. This is very super. This is funny to me, okay? I have 2 kinds, and I got another Amazon, like, search story for you if you did. Just go to show
please. Yeah,
but there's 2 kind of people that wrote me repeatedly after my second book, the one on Carlson. The Carlson Gracie students of Carlson students, they go, man, my coach has been saying this about Carlson for 20 years, and I didn't believe them until I read your book. and then the other category of people who wrote me were Carlson's actual students, the old school guys. Like, man, I've been telling my students this for 20 years, and they didn't believe me until they read your book. So it was just like one of those things where, like, what they've been saying all along was vindicated because a person from the outside said something, right? Because people, it wasn't believable that, you know, that Carlson was the center of the whole thing, because he just had zero marketing behind him. He just despised it. Like, that makes me like him even more. The fact that he was anti-marketing makes me admire him even more.
Yeah,
I came from a Carlson Gracie affiliate, so I was raised to think he was a god. It's kind of surprising to me that he's not well known, or that he's not considered well known.
Well, I mean, he's known as Vitor Belfort's coach. He was known there for a minute when he was alive, but
Victor Belfort.
Did I say Victor?
No, I'm saying
American.
That's what you say.
But there's that. You know, the BTT episode, but in general, man, like, Americans know Helio, Hoist, and Rickson. Like, that's really, you know, that really summarizes like the American acquaintance with jiu-jitsu history. And it's really unfair, man, because when it comes to it, Carlson did more than as far as a coach, as a fighter, as a human. You know, I was talking to Peixo Chino. I was just in Rio now for New Year's, and I went to his house because I wanted to meet him in person, you know, because I really clicked with the guy. And he said, you know what Carlson would do? When it was cold in Rio de Janeiro, he would let homeless people inside his gym to sleep on the mats. You know what that made me think of? I mentioned this to another person today. You know how these jiu-jitsu people put a patch on their gi that says 100% Jesus? Jesus is number one, and all that blah 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 about Jesus. I mean, you know, but if you're gonna live by it, talk about it, you should live by it, right? And here comes Carlson, who never taught. He doesn't put a patch on the gi that says number one Jesus. None of that. He actually goes and does it. Like, who lets homeless people into their own gym to sleep because it's cold outside? Who does that?
Well,
this is a different level. This is a humanist that martial arts are not. We're not used to seeing a humanist like that in martial arts. It's not common. You understand?
Right.
So I do color commentary, on like regional mixed martial arts events. If I have the ability to work Carlson Gracie in one of his little stories or Bob Shamrock or one of his stories those are 2 guys that literally took in street kids that tried to just if you make a difference in one person's life, dude, this is a win. Who knows how many people?
That's success. That's success as I define it. That's real success right there. You change the world in a way that's not selfish. It's actually giving something back.
Yeah. So where the rubber hits the road with the detractors from your stuff is the United States has like a revisionist history from what actually took place in Brazil to here. Like, whatever stories or foundation was laid there, it was prettied up and kind of massaged to be something that it might not be. And it's kind of like, as you know, it's kind of cult-like here in regards to a certain...
Yeah, and it's an American phenom. And it's an American phenom. Let's say that in Brazil, that doesn't, like, it's not a fee. It's in Brazil, I'm telling you, people look at things very differently. It never flew there because it was told there. It was packaged in a way that appealed to martial art lore in the United States, like the whole Bruce Lee phenom, like the
Yeah.
whole the Karate Kid thing. Like Royce Gracie fit that story hand in glove, and they went along with it because it was such a great story. You know, it sold like the weak defeating the strong. And I never liked that. I'm like, who said that being strong is bad? Since when is strong people the bad people here? Like, why do we paint the strong people as isn't being strong good? Right. And they never preached the weak should become stronger. They always preach train jiu-jitsu so the weak can defeat the strong. It's just weird, this odd thing. Anyone who's a fighter, any wrestler listens to that. I'm like, why are you guys praising weakness? Like, shouldn't we be teaching people how to be strong instead? Right. But it's such a good marketing ploy because it appeals to the nerd. It appeals 100%. To the guy that doesn't want to run sprints.
The taekwondo.
Doesn't want to lift. The taekwondo. The guy with bandana and nunchucks.
It only works until the strong guy learns a little jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. But why not be strong and technical, right? Exactly. Yeah. I have a T-shirt that actually Leo made me this T-shirt because I said this on a podcast and he made me a T-shirt that said, lapel guards and butt scooting are the new nunchucks. Because I joke around that like we became what we used to criticize. Jiu-jitsu is becoming bad. We went from being Spartans back to being the nerds. Like we were Spartans, man. What happened? Now we're the nerdy kids with flashy gis and weird things that I don't understand anymore. Like, what's the point of that? It doesn't work in a fight. This is useless. It's a fad. It will disappear, just like every other fad in world history, right? But people are it sells, man. It sells. It's me saying that a right hand and a left hook and a double leg and a rear naked choke are what you need to learn. That doesn't sell because no one's going to buy an instructional. But if I come up with, guard H, or guard J or something.
Reverse donkey.
Something stupid, lapel on my elbow, whatever bullshit.
Do you know where that bullshit started? I'll tell you where that bullshit started. TK. Oh, he's got the TK guard. He was the first one.
TK, I'm trying to remember.
TK.
Kosaka.
Yes, I met him. I trained with him. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the TK guard. Oh, it's the greatest guard ever. That was like the first time, like
What was the helicopter guard? What was the helicopter guard turned into tornado guard? People got to rebrand things. Sometimes like, oh, are you doing the F guard? And I'm like, show me. And they'll show something that's like, bro, everyone knows. There's nothing new about this. It's been doing this for 30 years. Like, but people have to reinvent the wheel, otherwise they can't make money, right?
So in MMA, they had a thing called the tarantula, which was it was the Americana. Bob Anderson, former Olympic wrestling coach, did this in the 80s. The Brazilians call it the Americana. So let's start from the beginning with you. Your jiu-jitsu roots start with a guy that I also don't think gets enough credit, Steve De Silva.
Yes.
Sugar Pop.
Sugar Pop. I'm glad you remember him, man.
Yeah.
He's the man. Yeah, he's a big impact on me. Huge. Very influential in my life.
So you were there. Were you there at the same time that BJ Penn was?
Oh, I trained with BJ when he was a purple belt. People were just starting to talk about him. Yeah.
But like, I'm looking at like the time frame of it. Then you kind of met up with BJ again. Were you there during the Grease Gate when BJ fought George St. Pierre?
No, I left J Sex, right? It was called at the time.
Yeah.
That was in late 2000. That's when I left. I went back to Brazil because I wanted to compete. And I was, that was I had the 2 years there, which were with Frank Shamrock, Tioshi Kosaka, Maurice Smith, Tito Ortiz. Who else was there? Chuck Liddell.
You were there with the Alliance.
Oh, Dana White used to sponsor me when I was 17. He used to pay for my tournaments. This was before he got into the UFC.
Wow.
Yeah, I have a T-shirt. It's my Instagram. I should be able to send it to you to remind me. It says Dana White Enterprise because he paid for my tournament. So I'm the picture of me on the podium with a T-shirt that says Dana White Enterprise.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you were there at BJ Penn, John Lewis, and those guys?
John Lewis, Gustavo Dantas. Yeah, I was. Marc Laimon came in later. Tony D'Souza. I was in the room when the Peruvian necktie was invented. When it was named and invented, I was Tony that was doing weird stuff to people all the time.
Yeah. John Lewis is another one of those names. Like he doesn't give interviews. We landed one with him. He also doesn't get enough credit.
Yeah, it's a generation that preceded the Ultimate Fighter. So most people most people think the history began with the Ultimate Fighter, right? Or the history began with Hoist, perhaps. There's an ancient. I interviewed Euclides Pereira the other day. Did I tell you that? Well, Euclides Pereira is 92 years old, 93, whatever it is now. He is the only guy to have defeated Carlson in the pre-Hoist Gracie era. Him and Ivan Gomez were hands down the best MMA fighters in the world, right? No one knows who the guy is. No one knows. No one's ever heard of the guy. This guy was like, had he had a Horion, he would have been, huge, but he didn't get his story told. So, his name gets buried amongst other names, but he's not just someone, man. This is a guy that was the equivalent of a John Jones in his time,
Did he have a lot of fights?
Oh, hundreds. These guys were fighting every other weekend, man. Hundreds. It was very informal. It was very like, like what do you call the backyard fights that Kimbo Slice. Right. That was borderline that, it wasn't like anything grandiose. But man, these guys had tons of. I have a picture. It's in my second book. You can see it, where Ivan Gomez and Euclides Pereira are exchanging blows from inside the 50-50 position. It's great, man. You can't make this up. This is like 1960s. They're bleeding and they're exchanging blows inside a 50-50 guard. Like, you can't make this up, bro. It's too good to be true. Yeah.
Your 2005 ADCC run was the first time I got to see you perform in person. Heading into it, what were your thoughts going into the tournament?
Hey, honestly, I was just happy to be there, man. I was very immature. I won one match. I lost to Cacareco my second match. Cacareco went on to make it to the final with Roger Gracie. He lost the final to Roger. I was just when I got invited, man, I was surprised I was in. I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, holy shit, this is me, top 16 in the world. Do I really deserve to be here? I was in so much awe that I was there that I wasn't really thinking about win. I wasn't ready to win, man. I didn't even deserve to be on that podium. I barely deserved to be in that tournament at the time.
So Anthony Parash, standout wrestler from Australia. I watched you beat him. Cacareco, obviously an absolute legend. It's more of a mentality thing. Like Jacare flew in, historic run. Roger Gracie, dude. Roger Gracie's run that year, arguably just as impressive as what we saw last year at ADCC.
I mean, yeah, Roger that was my division. Roger was the man, man. Boy, I talk about this all the time. Like, there are people out there that won more than him. Like Buchecha's won more than him. Bia Mesquita's won more than him. But when it comes to sheer dominance, I've never seen anything like it.
He submitted everybody.
Everyone. Yeah. Unbelievable.
Yeah, one guy quit. Yeah, everybody else submitted. Yeah.
Consistently. He did this consistently for as long as he was competing. It wasn't like every now and then that he did that. It was consistently.
Did that allow you to level up mentally? Was there a little growth because of your participation there?
I think I saw my friends. I think I saw Damien in the final with Jacare, and I'm like, hold up here, bro. I know, well, Damien's in the final. I can be in the final too. Like, I saw Leo win, and I'm like, hold up here. Leo just won his second ADCC title. Like, why am I not? And then I think my confidence really came from watching my teammates do it. Like, if they can do it, why can't I? And then in 2007, I had a very different mindset. I wasn't even dreaming of being in the Open, winning the Open. It was just more like I could maybe win my weight class, like Sean Gibraldi or tough matches, but on a good day I could beat him. And
Trenton, New Jersey, 2007.
Yeah, and that was my day, man. It's funny. I walked into that open weight class like very relaxed, unusually relaxed. It was like one of those days where you're just inspired. Your body and mind are in sync, and I feel confident. And because I had placed in my weight class, I beat Cacareco for that third place.
Here, let's kind of talk about it. So you lose to Cacareco. You fall short in 2005.
Yeah.
Mario Miranda, you win with him. Steve Rusk, who's obviously a standout coach in American Top Team. You beat him. Zanjay, you fall short to Zanjay, but he beats Braulio Estima for the gold that year.
Yeah.
You take third against Cacareco. You beat Cacareco. So you level up right there.
Yeah, he went for a knee bar. I spun out of the knee bar and chased his back from there and caught him in a rear naked. That's a huge win for me because Cacareco, he was beating Paulo Filho, man. Like, he was going to. I don't think he beat Paulo, but he was toe to toe with Paulo Filho. Like, he was top 3 in Brazil, man, at the time. That was a big win, And
huge.
Yeah, and I honestly, Shunji, I could have beaten him too. Like, I had him in a guillotine, but he slammed me. And Shunji that year had his traps up to his ears, and he was bald like you, sweaty. So I caught, and I was killing people with that guillotine. I was like, man, I've got him. And then I jumped close guard. He held me. He didn't go down like I wish he had. He picked me up and slammed me. You can slam it. And on the slam, sometimes the guillotine relaxes a little bit, right? And on that relaxation, he pulled his head out and scored the points. But it was, I thought, Chun is one of the most accomplished guys in the history of jiu-jitsu, man. He's such a legend. So no shame there. But in the open weight class, I walked in there very calm. I guess the pressure was off because I beat Cacareco. I was on the podium with Shanji and Browning. That's not a bad podium to be on, as far as podiums go. And I had a different mentality in the weight class. Well, in the open weight class, I was very relaxed. And
yeah, but it wasn't easy. You had Big Mac.
Was a beast, by the way. Big Mac has beaten a lot of big people. Don't know here, but he's beaten a lot of good people, man. Like a lot, And so that was a big win. I had
David Avalon
had a war with Avalon, who became a good friend of mine afterwards.
Both those brothers underappreciated.
Very. They're original. Funny. Yeah. Dave said once, I'm like, the only person. I mean, if there's someone out there that can say they're American Jiu-Jitsu, it's me, which is true because his lineage really isn't nothing to do with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He just grew around it, next to it, but not inside a BJJ gym. Everyone else is just modified BJJ, if you can even say it's modified.
So they were like the original Kill Cliff, like right next to American Top Team and holding their own.
Yes, correct.
Jorge Masvidal came from there. Like they're
correct. And a lot of good guys. Yeah, he did a lot of Masvidal came from their gym. You're right. And Dave, so Dave was the war. I took him down, I believe, which is like something I typically do. Somehow I got him down because he's the wrestler, not me. I joke with Jay, I beat you that day because you were tired. He beat Shandi that day. He had a war with Shandi. He beat Shandi and in a wrestling match, really. And then I guess he was tired. I don't know. I managed to take Dave down somehow. And in my third match with Andre Galvão, which is someone I had competed against before, and I just never had a problem with. Andre was I was confident about that match because I knew that styles never matched up. I was more worried about Verdun, to be honest. So when Andre beat Verdun, I was like, oh, this is good news. So the stars were aligning for me that day. Like all the signs were there. I'm like, oh, maybe I got something here, So
some of the pushback for you is because Marcelo Garcia has got one of those personalities. He walks in the room, everybody likes him. Everybody likes Marcelo Garcia.
Yeah.
And like anybody that's got a problem with Marcelo Garcia is either probably a competitor or they might be the issue.
Yeah, correct.
This was his year to finally win the absolute.
Yeah, I ruined it. I always joke, man. I'm the original Marcelo Garcia fan. I knew who he was when he was a purple belt. I was a blue belt, and I have to watch his matches. I'm like, yeah, I'd love to watch that guy, And so I've been a fan of his before he had any fans, truly. So but I knew his game. I knew what he was going to do. He's as incredible as he is. He's very predictable. Like, no offense, but it's like Roger Gracie's predictable, but you can't stop it. Like, some people are predictable, you can't stop it. Some people you can't. So I knew he was going to go for the arm drag to the single. I think he might be able to take me down, but he can't hold me down. There's no way he's going to hold me down. So I didn't care about the single, really. I was hoping he keeps shooting. In my head, I had the vision of the darts. What's funny? Before that match, I was warming up in the back, and my friend Sean Rigo at the time was like, Rob, why are you smiling? Why are you laughing? Take some deep breaths. Let's do some yoga. Let's focus. And I was walking around, laughing, joking. And in my head, I already won, man. It's such a weird feeling. I was celebrating the win before the match. I was so confident I was going to win that day. I've never, very few times in my life I can say felt that confident. But that day, I don't know. I think that was a special day. I really felt like if I fought him 100 times that day, I was going to beat him 100 times. There's no way. If he pulls half guard, there's no way he's going to sweep me. I'm in Damian and Lucas's half guard every day. He can't hold me down. Eventually, he's going to stick that neck out there. I'm going to get it because I was hitting that Darcy on everyone in practice. My timing was just on point. And yeah, he's a very likable guy, which makes me the villain because I'm taller. So you're the bad guy, Clearly, the tall people are the bad people, in this world.
And he's out of his weight class, by a lot, not by a little, by a lot.
He is incredibly talented, technical. He's crazy strong too. People give me like, oh, Rob won because he's bigger. I'll give myself the weight advantage. I am not stronger than him. I'll tell you that. Like no. Strength has very little to do with size. I think that's a myth in martial arts. I think strength is very specific to certain things. Marcelo Garcia is not, because he doesn't look like a bodybuilder. He feeds into that martial art lore we were talking about, the little guy defeating the strong, right? So people see him with no big shoulders and big arms. So like, clearly he's just pure technique. That's a load of crap. He's strong as shit. Anyone who's rolled with him will tell you. Like, he's unusually strong for his size. His muscle density must be through the roof. I'm not stronger than him. I'm heavier, not stronger. Oh.
Yeah, Matt Lindland was never going to win a bodybuilding contest, but he's strong as shit according to everybody.
No, it's a very though I always joke because it's like the way I explain this to people is like, who's stronger, swinging a golf club, a bodybuilder or Tiger Woods?
Yeah.
Well, strength is not strength is very specific to endeavor or to activity, right? Like, strength is something very specific. And it comes to jiu-jitsu, you see Mike Musumeci and you go, oh, he's pure technique because he's a little guy. No, it does not mean he's not strong as shit. Him being little and him being strong are like, they're not. There's nothing to do with one another, right? You can be tiny and very, very strong. I don't separate technique from strength. I think that's part of the martial art, the mythology around martial arts. I suspect its origin. I think it's a good sales pitch because, again, it appeals to the nerds. But reality of combat is technique and strength can't really be separated. I always say this to my students: technique is the intelligent use of your athletic abilities.
So you said you've been familiar with Marcelo since he was a purple belt. Did you ever see his wars with Cameron Earle?
I seen him lose to Cameron Earle. I only saw one. I know he lost twice. I've seen one of them, Budo Challenge. I was there. I was very surprised. Yeah, it had his number. You know another guy that had his number? Alexandre Dantas, Café. I think Café beat him 3 times. Just had his number. Go figure. Did it as well. Some people have your number, man. Some people have your number. Every Superman's got his kryptonite,
In wrestling, Dave Schultz always had trouble with Mike Sheets. They wrestled maybe 10 times, and 7 out of the 10 Sheets had beat him. Yeah.
I mean, some people that just they just have the. I think Daryl Goller beat Randy Couture 3 times.
It's wild.
Man, it's just like it's styles make matches, man. I know it's cliche to say, but it's so true. I had this guy in Brazil you've never heard of. I can give you his name. His name is Denis Gomes. He fought me twice. He beat the crap out of me. No one's ever heard of him. Just go figure. Purple and brown. He beat the living shit out of me. I couldn't even explain. My story, like, how did you lose this guy? I'm like, I don't know. He just beats me. I can't do anything against the guy, I think everyone's got like holes in their game, and someone just has the weapons to exploit that. It's part of what makes the game so interesting.
So fun, dude. Yeah, that math equation never adds up. All right, so you've done some incredible work tracing jiu-jitsu. Have you thought about doing something for Luta Livre?
I was just talking to Josias Cavalcanti yesterday, and we were talking about exactly that. I interviewed Eugenio Tadeu for another book that I have after the one that I'm working on now. He'll be in the next one. And he has some really interesting insights, man. He was a very honest person. I have a lot of respect for him. Very upfront, very like a real man, like very correct. The kind of guy that if you got into his face right now and he's probably in his 50s, he'd still scrap with you, like very courageous, and the things he had to say were real, man. A very real person. But I'll be honest with you. I think I've exhausted my interest in martial arts history. I'm moving on to other topics. I got 2 more books. One of them that's like about contemporary jiu-jitsu. The other one is really was going to be material in a second edition for book 1 and 2, but it got so dense that I'm going to publish it in a 4th book. But I think after that, I'm done with martial arts history. I got some other things I want to write about.
You're going to move on to murder mystery? Those are big sellers.
I want to get I have it in my head. I want to write. I would love one day to sit down with Coleman and write a historical novel about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and how it came about, but with like fictional characters, but like historical novels, like some fiction, some real facts all mixed up. And I think that'd be fun. But I have other things that I'm interested in. And I think as far as I mean, I could get into Luta Livre, you could get into MMA history, you can get into like, there's so many different avenues you can like pursue when it comes to studying it's such a rich history, right? Other countries, who says it's so in Brazil? There's a very rich grappling history in Hawaii and California. Did you guys know that during the Great Depression in California, there were arenas with over 10,000 spectators watching grappling matches with purses in today's money of over $47,000 in today's money? It was huge.
So they say live entertainment during the Depression kind of goes up.
Yeah, it goes up.
Yeah. Especially like the traveling circuses and stuff like that. I've got a jiu-jitsu poster from like the 1930s from Germany, from like a traveling circus.
Yeah. So these were the fever that we're experiencing now, this craze about jiu-jitsu and grappling. This is not new. It's a cycle. No, what's funny is that the book about Carlson, the first chapters, it goes. You read it. It goes from the circus act to the reality of combat, right? And then the new book, I got a chapter that's from the reality of combat to circus act, because we kind of gone full circle with jiu-jitsu. We're back into the circus now.
For anybody that might not be like familiar with the body of work that he put out, dude, the love and care and just the precision and like your anal OCD retentiveness in order to make sure that things are stated properly. It's really good, dude.
Thank you, man. And you know what I had in the back of my head? I was reading a book by Stephen King. It's called On Writing, where he's teaching. And I read this after I wrote my second book. So the guy should probably read something and become a better writer, right? And he has something in his book. He talks about the ideal reader. When you're writing a book, you should have an ideal reader in mind. And I realized when I read, oh, that's interesting, because I've always had that. I had an ideal reader in the back of my mind for both books. And the ideal reader was this little asshole who wanted absolute impartiality and didn't want to leave any holes for any other asshole to come and poke holes into the book, right? I was like watching out for that the whole time. I don't know if I accomplished that. Maybe I did. I mean, there are people that have found some things I disagree with in the book. I suppose some of it is up to the matter of opinion, not just fact. But that was the voice in my head, is just trying to be unbiased and, just try to explain every argument I was making in every detail possible, as much detail as possible, without making it boring. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I really took from it was you had said it's like a circus at some point, and the circus means that sometimes there needs to be acts involved. And in the early days, some of the jiu-jitsu was predetermined, some of like the outcomes.
Yeah, very common.
When do you think it stopped and became like a real, like legit sport, like across the board?
Are you talking about Vale Tudo or jiu-jitsu?
Jiu-jitsu.
I think that once they started the federation, it's safe to say the matches were real.
Okay.
So they had an in-house tournament in '54, which you read chapter 8, talks about the rule set. It's judo, ippon, vazari, osaikomi. They're all in the rule set. So the Gracies in 1954 are still clearly influenced by judo. Can't deny it. 1967, they start the federation, though they're not allowed to run tournaments until, I believe, 1973. By 1975, they have a new rule set that's very ground-oriented. So let's say by 73 onwards, the matches are no longer staged. We can say that for, with a great degree of certainty, because, or at least a level of certainty, I should say, because they're tournaments, right? It's hard to fix a match. It's a super fight in a professional event or in a circus or in kind of arena like that. I think it'd be easier to fix a match, but in a tournament format, it'd be very hard. And it's not to the point too, because now your money is not coming from ticket sales. It's coming from the competitors themselves. So I think that changes it stops being about entertainment at that point. It becomes about performance. So the optic is a little different under a tournament format, right?
How about Vale Tudo? Do you think there was a time when Vale Tudo was a performance and it turned into a real fight?
Essentially, there was no official organization like the UFC or a commission for that matter. So like the matches went case by case. They can modify the rules. Sometimes they would make the capoeiras wear a gi. There's a lot of debating. It's very interesting to see the kind of debates they had and what the rules said was you have to wear a gi the first round, but you don't have to wear a gi the second round. Like they played it by ear, man. Like they were really winging it. They're trying to figure out what was the best ideal recipe. It wasn't until one day they said, you know what, you do whatever you want, I'll do whatever I want, and we're just going to scrap. And it was kind of like the obvious solution to all the problems, but it kind of took them a while. They didn't reach that until 1933. This was like, I mean, these cross-style matches in Brazil started in the 1800s, really. So, and they were very popular around the world. They didn't just take place in Brazil, by the way. This was huge in Hawaii and Europe, all over the United
Germany,
States.
yeah.
Like it was a huge scene, But in Brazil, and I think, to some degree, you got to give Brazilians credit for this. They still the adherence to the reality of combat. They have at some point a segment of Brazilian society when we want to see real fighting. We don't want to see the bullshit. We want the real stuff. And there was a market for that, and that market grew, and it barely survived throughout the 50s and 60s and 70s in Brazil. Vale Tudo almost disappears, but it does come back eventually, as in the form of the UFC. But I don't think that there was already you guys know this. Japan was already on its way to MMA. It always existed in
strong style.
Yeah, like the Shuto style, right? It was always there. Was it called hook and shoot, or what was it called?
Shuto.
It was Shuto, yeah. It's pretty much MMA. But I think Hoist had that. It was a huge that marketing ploy that was so fantastic. But Vale Tudo has a long history in Brazil. It has its ons and offs with the Brazilian society. Like it's struggled a lot being accepted in Brazil. I give Brazilians a hard time about this all the time. People get kind of mad at me when I say this, but this is a very colonial aspect of the Brazilian psyche, right? It's very colonial. So you have the raw ingredients here, you export it to some other nation, they manufacture it, and then you buy it because some foreigner manufactured it for you. Well, that's MMA right there. It's a Brazilian product. It gets sent to the United States. Americans rebrand it. They call it MMA, and now Brazilians accept it. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable, man. Like to me, and Brazilians, some of them agree with me. You're right. This is a lack of national pride or self-esteem. Like I don't know. Like it's a complex of inferiority, but it's a Brazilian sport that was preserved miraculously where it died everywhere else, right? Not almost everywhere else. At least in Japan, it still existed in one form or another. But Brazilians did not accept it until Americans accepted it.
It survived in the pro wrestling circles of Japan. It barely hung on. It barely hung on.
Barely. Like it was, but it's so unusual to me that I started in '98, and if you told people you did jiu-jitsu, they assumed you also did Vale Tudo, and they assumed you were an animal. They assumed you were a hooligan. They assumed you were a killer. Yeah, you should stay away from my children, kind of thing, right? And it's so interesting for me to note that the second Brazilian society saw that Brazilian MMA fighters were like stars in Japan and the United States, how quickly they changed how quickly the barbarians became superheroes, And I always say this, I say this a lot because as a half Brazilian, that bothers me. Because I think Americans would have never accepted that the name MMA got switched over to Vale Tudo. No American would accept that. And it's unbelievable to me how quickly and easily Brazilians accepted that.
Well, Mike and I are both a couple of guys that scrounged the internet for Vale Tudo fights in the 90s. So we like the name.
We do. We love that shit. I've had Sergio Barbarelli on.
But it's like Americans, they changed it, rebranded it, right? You got to give Dana and other people their due credit. I'm not saying they were very important, no doubt. But it's just the acceptance of how quickly they accepted that change. Americans would have, this as an American, there is no way that if we had created MMA that we would accept that Brazilians rebranded Vale Tudo. Now we call it Vale Tudo because Brazilians call it Vale Tudo. There's no way that would have happened.
Yeah, here in '99, the UFC was pushing mixed martial arts instead of NHB, no holds barred. Yeah. NHB didn't really kind of go away until about 2004, at least here in the Midwest. All right, so we talked about fixed fights and stuff like that. Gracie, famous, obviously, lineage. Do you think Rickson may have done a fake fight?
I don't know. I'm going to say I don't think so. I think the ones that I saw at least look pretty real to me. Granted, no disrespect to Rickson, he did not pick a very deep pool of opponents. His toughest match was his first one. Zulu was not a super technical fighter, but he was a beast of an athlete. He was like a Francis Ngannou. And even if a guy that big doesn't know how to fight, he's still scary.
What about on the jiu-jitsu side?
On the jiu-jitsu side, I don't think anything fixed. I do think that, keep in mind that his father was president of the federation. Presumably, he was in charge of all the brackets, and he refereed all his son's matches, which is a conflict of interest anywhere in the world.
Okay,
I'm not saying that's why he won, but like that certainly was a little. It's unusual that your father would make your bracket and referee all your matches.
Okay.
That wouldn't fly anywhere else.
So people refer to Rickson as a world champion in jiu-jitsu. Yeah. Has he won a Brazilian national championship before?
The first Brazilian national championship was in '93. All right, it wasn't even the Confederation. It was the Copa do Brasil run by André Pederneiras. He actually won the first Brazilian nationals, and Rickson did not compete. He did win other local events in Rio, but he was never a national champion, or world champion for that matter.
Well, he's never a national champion, never a world champion, but he touts the 450-0 record.
I have never seen records of that. I'd be very suspicious of them being real. I don't think anyone was keeping track of that. I think it's just I don't believe that's real. I think
is it maybe practice? Is it maybe a practice record, or is that?
I got a record of 1,000-0 then. Like I went years in the gym without getting tapped. I don't think that means, honestly, training is training. I don't put too much emphasis into training because I've seen people who are mediocre in the gym and they win everything when they compete, and I've seen the opposite. I've seen the guys that are monsters in the gym, but they don't compete well. At the end of the day, man, it counts when the lights are on. That's when it really counts.
Okay,
my take on it.
But you're talking about you.
Yeah.
Like in the last 10 years, he's got 50 wins on his record.
It's the fans. Honestly, we can only blame Rickson for not denying it. But most of these claims are coming from people that I just need someone to look up to. A lot of people need you have a father figure, man. Someone out there's got to be perfect. My dad's not perfect. My friends aren't perfect. No one else is perfect. Someone out there's got to be this figure that's heroic so I can look up to them. I think people need that. Like some people, not some people. I don't. I'm happy with the human. I'm happy with the flawed. I'm happy with the man that is either a devil or an angel. I'm happy with just being real. But some people need a guy that is absolutely flawless in every regard.
It's so weird, dude. It's so friggin' weird, man.
It's cultish. It's very strange, I'm perfectly happy with. I would admire Rickson more had he fought Sakuraba and lost than I do having him not fighting. I would admire anyone for that matter. Anyone that just throws themselves in the fire. I wish I had lost in MMA. I didn't, not lose because I was fighting top 5 guys. I fought some good guys, but I don't take any pride with my undefeated record. There's zero merit in that. I didn't fight the best. Zero. I would have gladly taken a loss or two and just I think I had the full experience now. I admire people who throw themselves in the fire, man. That's what a warrior does. That's what we do.
Henzo and Hoyler.
Hats off. Hats off. This is what I always. I look. I met Rickson a few times. It was very nice to me. I'm not disrespecting the guy, but I always thought Hoist was more of a warrior, man. Like, he beat Hoist in practice. I'm like, who cares? Look at the guys Hoist has fought. Look at what he's done. I always thought Hoist was more representative of what I looked up to in fighters in general, man. Like, you gotta, I think the quality of the people you fight says everything about the level of courage you possess. And that's what we do, man. We teach courage, don't we? Is that what we do? Fighters.
Okay.
We this is who we are.
In your book, which, like I said, I've kissed your ass this whole fucking interview about your book. But in your first book, you mentioned that Rickson's record is ridiculed in Brazil. When you wrote those words down and you knew you were sending them out to be published, you had to have known that there was going to be a lot of blowback in regards to that.
Oh, but it's like no one takes it seriously because, like, I think the old school guys know this. Like, it was important for marketing. No one disputes that he was the most dominant guy in that mid '80s to like early '90s period, like maybe early '80s to early '90s. But that's common in jiu-jitsu. Pejipano was the most dominant guy for a while. Margarita was the most dominant for a while. Saulo was for a minute there. Like, this is normal in competitive sports, and he was a guy that was, he was their number one. The Gracie family has always had that. But I don't think anyone in Brazil takes. I've never heard any Brazilian talk about this 400-0 record.
Well,
That's something
he's added 50 more in the last 10 years. It's
I
450
I
now.
I would need some. Always, like we always say, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, right?
Yeah, and like I know, I know people in the comment section of my YouTube. They kind of dump on me going, I shit on the Gracies. Dude, let me tell you something. Without the Gracies, you and I are not talking.
Yeah,
My
I agree.
friggin' dog is named Gracie.
Yeah.
Rickson. I'd like to have a conversation about it. That's it.
Yeah,
I some questions.
I don't. I think we have better people to admire. Not that he wasn't great. I'm sure he was. From all accounts, he was phenomenal on the mats. I've heard many credible people tell me that, and I believe it. I don't think they're lying. With that being said, like, I think we have people who have done more, and I would rather hold them on a pedestal. Carlson's just one amongst many others. Ivan Gomez includes Ferreira. Even the younger generation, I think that, like, some of these guys, like, some of these guys have like 40, 50 fights now in MMA, bro. How do we not credit that? That's crazy.
Yeah, 50 Fight Club members. Yeah.
Like Sean Carter, Jeremy Horn, like, some of these guys are just obsessed with fighting. I don't care how many losses they have. I appreciate the warrior spirit, man. I say this because I shat my pants every time I step into that cage. So I appreciate someone that has the courage to do it because I know how hard it is.
All right. You worked out at Extreme Couture for a while.
Correct.
Were you there during the Shawn Tompkins era?
Yeah, I remember Shawn trained he was my coach there for a brief moment. I know him well.
What was your experience like with him?
He had his fault. Extreme Couture had a lot of coaches, man. Like, it's almost like there's an excessive coaching, in my opinion. When Randy was there, it was the best. Like, Randy was like the leader that everyone wanted, I think. And it kind of like became like a lot of different coaches when he wasn't there. I think Shawn was probably one of the main guys, main coaches in there. There were others, but they were cool with each other. But at the same time, it's always like, I am a better coach than you. My guy is better than your guy. The hierarchy wasn't very clearly defined. So Shawn had a following, mostly the Canadian crowd, right? How about Canadian, like, what, lightweights and middleweights?
Shawn Tompkins, Mark Homnick. Yeah.
Yes, there's a bunch of them. Like, there's like 12 of them, and they all train with Shawn, and it was almost like a team within a team. But they were cool, Like, there's some talented guys. I think he was a good coach. He deeply cared. Like, he gave a fuck about his fighters, and he cared, and he put his heart and soul into them. I have no doubts. Like, he was a dedicated coach, no doubt.
So you were there with Junie Browning as well.
Junie, I was his coach during the Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah. Care to expand on that, or are we just stopping there?
He was like an early, how can I say, like, that the whole, like, what later Connor and Chael Sonnen and the Gordon Ryan type, like, he was already trying to be that back in 2009 or whatever it was. He obviously wasn't as dominant as Connor. Like, Connor, say what you want, he can fight. Junie was good, but he didn't have that level of greatness in him. He was a tough kid and everything, but he was trying to promote himself by being obnoxious, and it works, man. Like, TV craves that. Like, the only way you're going to get your grandma to watch The Ultimate Fighter is if she sees some soap opera to it. Like, it's got to be some drama. If there's no drama, like, most people are not interested in techniques by themselves, or even if you took out, look, if you just had a guy like Khabib and McGregor fight, and all they did was fight and didn't talk, and those press conferences didn't exist, I think that UFC would have sold a tenth of what it sold. I think that's an unfortunate feature about people. I dislike that. I'm happy to put it on mute. I skip all the shit talking. I know absolutely nothing about the drama. I want to see the footwork, the head movement, the timing, the ground and pound, and the chokes. That's what I'm in for. But the average fan more than that.
Was your time at the Ultimate Fighter what kind of inspired you to pursue mixed martial arts?
Oh no, I want to do MMA. I mean, I started jiu-jitsu to do MMA.
Oh,
I
really?
saw. Oh yeah, absolutely. To me, jiu-jitsu was a trampoline to MMA. I saw Royce Gracie defeat Dan Severn in that UFC 4, and I was hooked. I'm like, I have no idea what that guy is doing, but that's what I want to do. I wanted to be Royce. That was my. He's the only guy till this day, before anyone calls me an anti-Gracie, that gives me goosebumps. Every time I see him, I get starstruck. I've met everyone in this business. I've trained 6 UFC champions. I've met billionaires. I've met celebrities. I never get starstruck. The only guy that like I see him and I go, holy shit, that's
Hoist
Royce.
is the man.
He's the only guy that has that effect on me till this day.
He's the man.
Yeah,
Hoist is the man.
and it's because he was my childhood, my youth, the hero of my youth. Like I saw him and I go, I have no idea what he's doing, but that's what I'm gonna do. So I wanted to be a UFC champion. That was my dream. I wanted to follow in his footsteps.
So you don't start fighting until October 17, 2008. Like you're already a jiu-jitsu world champion at that point.
Yeah.
Multiple time jiu-jitsu world champion. So you fight for Tough Enough, John. What was like? How did this come together?
I finished college. I finished my bachelor's in history in Brazil, and that was the same year I won the ADCC. So I felt that chapter of my Brazil life had ended, and it was time for me to grow. It was time for me to go somewhere else. So I decided to move to Las Vegas. I had friends and family here. I had trained here before. My father was in Las Vegas at the time, so I had a home base. And I got it in my head I was going to go to Vegas. And I was going to fight MMA. I was going to become a world champion, UFC champion specifically. I met Randy through someone introduced me to Randy. I asked for a job. I got the job right away.
He's certainly qualified.
And I'm like, I have no MMA experience, and I'm training. They're like 30, 40 like professional MMA fighters on the mats, and I'm training all of them. I'm like, this is fun, and I love to teach. So I got sidetracked coaching. I was a coach before I was known as a fighter. That's what most people know me as, actually, if anything. But it was a distraction. Now looking back, I just can't say no to people. I suffer that character flaw. If you ask for my help, I'm going to help you, even if it hurts me in the process. I love to teach, and I think I got distracted coaching, really teaching seminars. I think I should have focused more on fighting.
Did you ever deal with one of the promoters, Barry Meyer?
Yeah, I remember them well.
Yeah, unfortunate passing.
Yeah, he's a good dude, man. I didn't know him well. Like he was
liked him.
promoted for my fight, and I interacted with him on a number of occasions, and he seemed like a jolly, fucking good dude, man. Like there's no, when that happened, I was just like, whoa, you don't know, man. You don't know. Someone acting happy online, smiling, and you joking around. You don't know what's going on inside. Man, just try to be good to everyone, man. You never know. It might be the last time you see that person.
Speaking of which, another person that departed way too early, Robert Follis, one of your coaches.
Robert Follis too, man. I knew him. Man, I had lunch with Robert Follis like a week or two before he shot. He asked for a job, and I kind of feel bad because I said yes. Let's continue this conversation. I'm interested, but I was like maybe like now looking back, maybe I should have been more excited about having him, and I wasn't not excited. I was just like maybe playing poker and poker face and not giving him.
Or it's a foregone conclusion. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a job interview.
Yeah.
Like, and I would love to have the guy. But he was struggling, man. And I know looking back now, like I think he reached out to me. He's like, will you give me the sort of appreciation that I feel I deserve? And maybe he didn't feel that, but he's a good man. Here's the thing about Robert Follis, bro. There's a lot of shit that he taught that I didn't agree with, like on the ground. And like sometimes like he couldn't help me that much when it came to ground fighting. Not to toot my own horn, but I'm more qualified than him. I was, but man, he was very good about making you do the shit you knew how to do. You knew you had to do it, but you didn't want to do it. And I remember just working on the clinch on that wall with him. And he would make me like close the distance and like had my head movement and getting in there on the wall. And the shit we do, it's the same stuff I teach till this day. It was so functional. And it was some of the best coaching I've ever had. He was a good coach, man. He truly gave a shit.
Okay. So Joey, we just heard a world champion say he couldn't really help me on the ground, but I accept him as a coach. If you look at Robert Follis, like as a whole, Randy Couture, Dan Henderson, Matt Lindland, those are all Olympic athletes. And then you got like a white trash dude like Chris Lieben. You got guys like that are like from completely different way of life. All of those guys, money, different personalities there go, no, you're our coach. And then you look at Robert's background, it's like it's not impressive. Like in terms of like his body of work of what he's done competition wise.
Right.
So it's like you got all of these, yourself included, world-class athletes looking at him going, no, you're a coach.
Didn't he train Sonnen too?
Chael Sonnen? I mean, it's just look at all those personalities there. Like somebody in that crowd is going to go, he's full of it. I'm not believing it. And it never, Ryan Schultz, another Ed Herman, those are not easy personalities.
Right.
And he got everybody's respect.
It's amazing.
He cared. He cared, man. He's the kind of guy that will go that extra mile. He didn't do it for money. That's what it comes down to, bro. Like it wasn't the money. He loved to coach. He loved to help. He would be like, you would get tired of like, you would want to leave the mats before him, put it like that. He's the kind of guy that, I'm not going to lie. There are days I teach and I'm like, fuck, I just want to go home and eat. Like I'm like, I've been doing this for 27 years, bro. Like I just want to go home and fucking go to sleep, but like, he's the kind of guy that was always there to answering questions and very dedicated, sad thing, man. I wish I'd been more, I don't know, warming to him when he sought me out. And I feel, I'd be honest with you, I feel somewhat guilty about it because I just didn't know he was that close to the edge, man. I had no idea. Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of those unique personalities, man. I respect him. I mean, obviously. So, I mean, you win your first fight by armbar. Here, let's talk about a rush. You've had some amazing opportunities and wins in jiu-jitsu. What is that adrenaline dump as compared to like what you experience in mixed martial arts?
I was terrified of getting knocked out. Petrified. You know what's funny, man? True story. Like, if you watch my fights, I know this doesn't look believable, but you can ask my training partners. Ask Vanderlei Silva, for that matter. I had exchanged blows with Vanderlei Silva in practice. Never had a problem with it. There were not many people that wanted to train with Vanderlei in those days. There were not many people that wanted to spar with Vanderlei because Vanderlei was trying to knock you out in practice every day. And Forrest would, run at him, and because Forrest is crazy, and I would exchange blows. I can't match the man, of course. I'm not saying I'm even close to that level in striking, but I wasn't scared. Like, I'd throw myself in the fire. But when it came to an actual fight, I had that image of Marcelo Garcia and Saulo Ribeiro getting knocked out. And I think Marcelo Garcia got cut, not knocked out, right? Saulo got knocked out. And I'm thinking, I don't want that to be, please don't be me, please don't be me, please don't be me. I don't want to be that guy. And I was so terrified of getting knocked out. I didn't want to throw any punches. I just wanted to clinch because I knew I could put him away. And I think that hurt me because I was gassed the fuck out every single end of first round. Like, I had this strategy. Now, this is reckless and insane, but this is my philosophy. I know how to fight tired. I know I'm not going to quit. Most people don't know how to fight tired. Most people quit when they get tired. That's a quality I have. I'm not a great athlete. I'm not the greatest technician. I know that. But when it comes to heart, I have many memories of me crawling off the mats in jiu-jitsu tournaments. Many, many memories of me literally crawling off the mats because I had nothing in me. I couldn't stand up. I was so tired. So I know how to fight tired. I know it's not going to alter my mentality. So my philosophy is if I just make this into a scrap early on and put this guy on the fence and wrestle him to the ground, no matter how tired I am, as long as he also gets tired, I'll have an advantage. And that was kind of like my philosophy. And it almost blew up in my face in my last fight, but it generally worked. I won all my matches except for the last one, first round. It's quick submissions, but it's a reckless strategy, but it was more me panicking about not getting knocked out. I was terrified of getting knocked out in a fight.
Well, you were lucky to get that fight. I mean, it was an amateur bout. It's in Vegas. I'm sure you sold 1 million tickets to it.
Well, it was hard to get that fight. Yes, that kid was like 8-0, by the way, 9-0.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah,
also an unusual record for an amateur, right?
yeah.
And but the thing is, I had never been hit in the face in my life, and I'm like, why would I start pro? And it was like, bro, you got to go pro. You're an ADCC champ, and I'm like, yeah, but I want to see what I'm made. Let me get in there first. Let's see if I like this. Like, you don't debut in jiu-jitsu as a black belt.
No.
As a white belt, you go blue belt. To me, this is common sense.
Right.
Right? Like, why
So
can't
true.
I go at least have one experience as an amateur just to see? I've never been
The
hit in
nerves
the face
out.
in my
Get the
life,
nerves
bro.
out. Yeah.
You know, and I'm glad I did. I don't regret it. I don't. People give me so much shit for that. I'm like, I have no regrets. When Dylan Dennis was asking me for advice, I'm like, bro, you should fight amateurs. Like, bro, I'm Dylan Dennis. I'm gonna make my money. I'm like, okay, you're doing it for the money. I get it, but you've never been hit in the face, bro. Like, get an amateur fight.
Well,
see if you like it. You know?
Joey, when we were talking in our last interview with Dan Bobish, we had talked about some of the nefarious people in Canada that would do events. And I'm not saying this is one of them, but you fought in Victoria, British Columbia, the Armageddon Fighting Championship. Lots of bikers there.
Huh.
I heard, yeah.
You didn't see anything.
I heard I was like biker land. I've been to like some of the after parties, you know, and I was just there to like just do my job, you know, but I didn't know anything beyond that, you know. I had a good experience there, man. It was
You definitely got paid cash, I'm assuming.
Can't remember, bro.
There's no way you got a check for that, dude. I know what was going on up there. There's absolutely no
honestly,
way.
I wouldn't lie to you. I have no.
Okay.
I don't remember.
So here's the thing: like when you're on the radar, it's impossible to match you unless somebody is kind of like, all right, this is my do or die. I get this fight, I win, I go to the UFC, and I'm at that age whether it's going to happen or it's not. Bastien Huveneers was 5-0-1 in his last 6. He's not an easy opponent.
You know what? I didn't fight like any stars in the UFC, of course, but every single guy I fought, if you look at their records when I fought them, they had very good records.
Dude.
Every one of them.
Yeah. Your next one is Clay Davidson. He's on a 5-fight win streak. Finish him with an armbar. You're at AFC again. Mike Nichols. He's the guy that lost to Matt Hamill to get into the Ultimate Fighter house.
Yeah.
So, like, these aren't easy fights, dude.
No, I knew that. I told my manager, too, at the time, I did not want easy fights. I wanted fights that would get me into the UFC. I wanted guys, I didn't fight any guy that had an even record or a negative record. Every guy I fought was like that, 5-0, 7-2, you know, like 8-2 or whatever. Like, that was the average guy I was fighting. Yeah, man, I wanted that because I wanted tough fights because I wanted to get in the UFC quick. My goal was always to win a UFC belt, man. That's honestly what I really wanted.
You know, Isaac Villanueva is next, and after him, you get a guy that's 4-1 with 3 KOs, Chris Reed. He's in that same category. He gets a win over you. You know, he gets his moment.
Yeah,
like it's, you know.
I think I had some press at the time too. I was cornering all these guys. I was on the Ultimate Fighter a whole bunch. UFC, what do you call it? The Countdown was interviewing me all the time, you know. So people knew me from that. So I guess for them it would have been like a big win. Like these guys that came at me too, man. They none of them walked in there to lose because I was like that ticket too, you know, since because I wasn't in the per se, but I would have given him some notoriety, I suppose.
Okay, so you were sponsored by Hayabusa at this time.
Correct.
Did you ever deal with Kyle Stoltz?
What's that?
Kyle Stoltz. He was like one of the managers of sponsorship right around this time.
I know the name, but I'm trying to.
He's the one that he was in Vegas working, got lured into a FBI sting, talking to a minor.
I don't remember, man.
Paige Van Zandt, Liz Caramucci, he managed all of them. Yeah, I think he even managed Gaethje at one point.
I know the name. The name rings a bell, but I don't know. Can't think of it.
Okay. Either way, even if you dealt with him, it was not memorable. Fair enough. Marc Laimon, what was your experience like with him?
Man, he was. I remember when I met Laimon, he was a purple belt. We were coming to Hawaii at the same time. I met BJ. I met BJ and Laimon on the same trip, Hawaii, 1999.
Oh wow!
And went there to train and spent like a couple weeks sleeping at the academy with Marc. Became friends. I moved back to Brazil. When I came back, he was already a Cobra Kai. You know, he had that fallout with John Lewis, and he was a Cobra Kai. Yeah, man, he's a good coach, man. He had that bad experience at Gracie Torrance, right? So he didn't have any love for the Gracies. You know?
He doesn't.
Yeah, he was a good coach. I didn't get to when I trained with Marc. I was a blue belt. I was a 17-year-old blue belt, so I could barely say that I really trained with him. When I was an adult and I came back, it was weird, man. Like I think he was like not. I don't know. I tried to be the guy's friend. It was hard, put it like that. Like he didn't think he wanted to be friends with me. I think he saw me as, I don't know, like I had just
competition.
As a threat maybe. And like some of his students left his gym to train with me. And I get that, man. It's happened to me before. And that sucks. So I guess he kind of blamed me, even though I never had a problem with the guy. I don't know. It just got weird there, even though nothing ever happened.
Well, you're a Vegas guy. He had a gym in Vegas. Were you surprised?
Yeah.
Were you surprised to see him leave?
I think he was fed up with Vegas, and I can see why. It's being a coach, man, in Vegas is a very, very ungrateful business, bro. You give these guys their heart and soul. You're not getting paid, man. You don't do it for the money. You do it for the love. But if you don't get the appreciation back, it's kind of like, why did I just spend half my life training you fucking assholes? And I think that's what happened. He got fed up with it. And I get where he's coming from because that's happened to me as well. And it's a very heartbreaking feeling, man. Like watching your investments just not give a fuck about what you've taught them and just leave like that. Like it's nothing, like you meant nothing to them. It's a shitty life, man. Being a coach is not, it's funny. It's the kind of perspective you don't have until you're in those shoes. You have to be on that side of the fence to feel what it's like to have people you invest your heart and soul into walk away from you like you're nothing. Like it never meant anything to them,
Yeah.
It's like you have these like adopted children that just one day just walk away from you. Like, wait, what? You mean that all that was for nothing?
No.
And then it makes you not want to do it anymore. But again, what are you going to do? Get a 9 to 5? Like as much as my job sucks, like I would rather my job than a 9 to 5.
Yeah, no doubt. You fought at LFC 19. You fought DJ Linderman. So DJ Linderman doesn't have like a real impressive record when you look at the stats, but then you look at the body of work. He's got wins over Devin Cole, Jeff Monson, and Derek Mayman.
Wow,
that dude's legit, dude.
Yeah, he could scrap, man. They presented him to me as a dangerous fighter.
Sure.
Like, someone that was a serious threat. Like, he came to scrap. He came to win. These guys were all swinging. They weren't like messing around. I don't think any of those guys was intimidated by me because they saw my previous fights. This guy can't take a punch. This guy can't scrap. He's just a jiu-jitsu guy. That was sort of the reputation I think I had, which is fair, I suppose, if you watch my fights. But grab people right away. Like,
it is what it is.
It's funny, man. Like, I'm not bragging, but I was a decent striker, man. I was not terrible. I could hang. I did it for 12 years. Like at the end there, like I was doing okay, man. Like I almost, if you saw me spar and like hit pads, you're like, oh, he looks like I've been doing this my whole life. I became a decent striker over time, but it made no sense to me to try to display it in a fight. Like, why would I walk into a gunfight with my secondary weapon if I got perfectly well functioning AR-15s right here? Why would I pull a handgun? Like it made no sense. I just wanted to clinch right away. Yeah.
So you were supposed to go to the UFC twice prior to getting there. One was a licensing issue, and the other was a staph infection. What happened with your licensing?
Was that the TUE one or which one was that? I can't remember now.
I watched.
Okay, so UFC I remember staph infection was in Brazil. I had a staph infection that was not fully healed. I didn't want to gamble. Like, I worked way too hard to get here, and I'm not going to mess it up because of some antibiotics and me not training well, right? And then I had that TUE incident where I did file my paperwork, and then they wanted to randomly test me. I'm like, okay, well, I told you guys I'm on testosterone because I'm prescribed. So back in the day, you can get the TUE, right? They don't have that anymore, but they did. And my levels were, I tested at 156 nanomilligrams per decimilliliter. That's the testosterone of a 12-year-old girl, basically. And I'm fighting the UFC. I'm at 156. I'm like, I got to do something about this. So I got on prescription. I filed my paperwork to the UFC. I don't know what happened there.
Well, wait, let me kind of set the table here. A lot of people had this prescription at this time.
Oh, yes.
So this isn't like, well, I'm just kind of doing this on my own, and hey, turns out I couldn't do it. No, a very large percentage of the UFC roster was actually doing this.
And there's a perfectly good argument for it. Like, it's not an argument that is made because the public is so hostile to say in steroids, but there is a medical reason for it. Like, if your levels are at 156 and if I got to fight a guy like John Jones whose natural levels are 900 plus, whoa, shit, let's talk about fairness here. If the point of the conversation is fairness, let's have that discussion, but let's have it with doctors on the table and some data at hand, not just like out of prejudice and ignorance. So yeah, I personally, I thought the TUE, I understand why they want to get rid of it. It's a pain in the ass to everyone. It's a lot more work for everyone. But if the purpose of the whole thing is fairness, I think TUEs should be on the table. Because that's going to level the playing field. If your levels are low, shit. If you are low on any other substance, what do doctors do? They give you a prescription. That's how nature works. You need to be leveled about all this stuff. That's common sense.
Joe, have you ever heard about steroids in Jiu Jitsu?
There's rumors. There's rumors, vicious rumors that in the grappling world, just because they don't test, people assume that everyone's juicing. It's nasty.
So you're competing at the highest levels. The people across from you, are melting a cup at the very least.
And honestly, I mean, I obviously I've been on them. I think you have to have this conversation, man. Like, I think there's a lot of misunderstandings here, man. Because I had to do some reading on this to try to understand what was happening. It's like there's an assumption there that we're all created equal. We are not.
No,
we have scales for a reason because we're trying to level the playing field, right? That's why we have scales. Well, scales are easy. It's easy, right? There are other advantages that we have that doesn't do with weight. It has to do with red blood cell count, muscle density, bone density, right? Nature is different. We are not clones. We're different for a reason. That's how nature made us, right? There's a specific reason for our differences. You understand? And I think that your hormonal level is one of these. There are people whose natural levels are through the roof. Through the roof.
Yeah.
You understand? Like, I think that a TUE that puts you on within the average, I think that's for reasons of fairness. I am in favor of them. For the same reasons, if you are deficient in any other substance, whether that be vitamin C or some mineral, your doctor will put you on prescription. If you're deficient, we got to keep for health reasons. There's no advantage, So that was my philosophy, and I didn't pop because I told them I was on it. I don't know what happened, but basically they said I was not allowed to be on a prescription, even though I had a doctor's prescription and I had filed all my paperwork. But it is what it is.
Oh, okay, so you're obviously a lot more open about it than most. The issue I have isn't with you; it's how it was handled on their end. For instance, they bring you into the UFC. You had licensing issues because of this. You get it clarified. They bring you in. You fight Keith Barish, who's, was he 4? He's got 4 first-round finishes. So this is his 5th fight. I mean, he's kind of a decently well-known wrestler. You fight him. You get the win. You pop for what you just explained. And then you don't fight again in the UFC. Did you ask for a release or did they release you?
They released me because I think they considered the time I was going to fight Cody Donovan in October, I believe, and they considered that a first strike, right? I think, and I'm like, well, I don't know where the miscommunication happened. It wasn't on my end, but I did file my paperwork. I remember doing that. I had a prescription. I thought it was clear. So when they wanted to randomly test me, I'm like, okay, well, what's the surprise here? I told you guys I was on it. They said no, but you were not approved. So there was some miscommunication took place there. I don't know where I erred in that.
Well,
yeah. When the Keith Bull, look, I have no problems taking the blame for where I earned it, right? And just I do have issues where taking the blame I didn't deserve, right? So, for example, this first time, I don't think I was to blame. When I did pop with the Keith Barry fight, I lied to them, so I'm wrong. I lied on my paperwork. I was coming off a cycle. I did my math on my fucking dumb internet research. I thought it'd be out of my system because because the internet knows everything, right? Like you should just Google things and there you can, some guy on some fucking Reddit forum knows what he's talking about clearly. And I'm like, oh, it's going to be out of my system by then. It turns out it wasn't. My levels were not super high, So when you see that 14-to-1 ratio, that is an irrelevant metric. Any endocrinologist will tell you that. My free testosterone levels were 450 something. So that's well within the range. It's not a very high level. It's an average level, below average, if anything. So there was no advantage. I mean, you can look at me and fight. I don't look jacked. Just look at me.
You look like a fighter. Yeah,
I look like an below average guy in the 205 division, muscle wise. Just look at me. That was not juiced through my mind. I was taking a very small amount of testosterone just to level me up. With that being said, I was wrong. I lied.
Wow. Here, let me make an argument for you as well. You fought a 205-pound weight class. You weighed 202.
Yeah.
Like you're you're underweight.
Yeah. I was not juiced out of my mind. The
that's
14-to-1
your
ratio
proof right there.
of testosterone to total testosterone, it is an irrelevant metric. You can ask any dog. It proves that you have exogenous testosterone, but it says nothing about how much of actual free testosterone you have because you don't find that out through urine. That's why a blood test is messier. I understand it is costlier. I understand that, but it's the only metric that teaches you anything about where your levels are actually at. The blood work, urine is just cheap and quick, which is why they do it, but it doesn't teach you much. So that was a story.
You're here. So I'm an armchair guy. I'm watching from the couch. At 202 pounds, 202.5 pounds in the 205-pound weight class, you are undersized. So,
correct.
If you were really juicing, you knew that's what your weight was going to be. Like you're on the scale.
I was taking 1 cc of cypionate testosterone a week, which is not a large amount. It's a medical amount. My free testosterone levels were 450 something.
Yeah.
I know this because I'd done an exam right around the time I stopped my cycle. It was not high. So I was coming off. I thought it'd be out of my system. It wasn't. I am wrong for lying. And for that, I'll take the blame. I am wrong for lying. I am not guilty of having an advantage because I had no advantage.
No.
450 is normal.
If I were to give you advice in hindsight of this, always use the middle of your urine stream. That's all I'm going to tell you. It either comes out at the beginning because the metabolites are there or grabs out of it at the end. I have former law enforcement. I have helped more people beat drug tests and have gotten guns from it. From just
here's the thing. You already know more than I do that because whatever I know, I read after I failed my drug test because I was very confused about that 14-to-1 ratio. I was like, this can't be right. I had to understand what it was that was 14-to-1. But my free testosterone levels were very low. But I never knew how to pass a test. I don't know nothing of that.
Yeah.
I would hear these stories and that sounds terrifying. I was just like, well, if 8 weeks it's out of my system, in 8 weeks I'll be good to go. Well, it turns out you're not good to go in 8 weeks.
I can only tell you, I dealt with drug addicts that had to deal with a probationary officer, and through trial and error, all right, use the beginning, use the end. That sweet spot's right in the middle. That's all I'm telling you consistently.
Too bad a breathalyzer doesn't work that way.
No, not at all. I would recommend against that. Your last fight was Ryan Spann, and he's 9-2 with 8 finishes. And he goes on from this fight and has a 14-fight career in the UFC. That's another tough dude, man.
He was a tough fight, man. He came ready. I had a difficult camp. I felt like
limping. You were limping. Your gait was off.
It was all off, man. I was not myself mentally. I knew it was my last fight. That was my goodbye fight. I knew that. They were testing, so I was not on anything because I wanted to prove a point. I'm going to win. I'm not going to go out with like being cut from the UFC. I'm going to have one more fight, and I'm going to walk away with a win. And the conditioning was not. I was off for the condition that fight. I didn't feel. It's just like some things were missing as far, especially my condition. Like I really felt like I always had issues with that, but I don't know, man. It just wasn't I wasn't myself. Like,
did you have an adrenaline dump?
I beat the guy, but I missed some submissions that I would have never missed before. I'm like, how did I miss that armbar? Like, how did I miss that Darce? I'm like, what the hell just happened to me? Like, I just didn't feel like myself. I can't explain. It just wasn't a good day.
Did you have an adrenaline dump?
Yeah, that.
For sure.
Had, you know what it was?
See it.
On the fence, I tried to put him away quick, which I always do. I should have been more patient. I had him on the fence. He was sitting down right in front of me, and I saw Darce from the fence standing, which is a risky move because if I miss, I would have been underneath him. And he's a big dude. He's not a small guy, right? And I have gloves on, so all these things. So I'm like, I'm going to get to this Darce. I'm going to finish the fight in under a minute like I always do. And he gets that. Lo and behold, he gets out of the Darce. I think he knees me in the gut. I was peeing blood for 2 days straight. And dude, I took some shot. Wasn't beat up physically. My eye had a black eye, but I took some shots to the body. Man, I walked out of that first round like I couldn't even stand. I was so tired. I remember the referee walking up to me, and I met up with the referee years later. Like, I was the referee for that fight. You remember me? And you remember what I asked you? Like, I don't remember you, but I remember what you said. And then he goes like, "What did you say?" I said, "Robert, do you want to continue?" And I remember looking up to him. I'm like, what kind of question is that? Of course I want to continue. What fucking dumb question is that? Like, yeah, no, I'm not going to quit. And then I got up and I could barely put my hands up because I was so exhausted. The good news is my reckless strategy did work because Ryan Spann was just tired, I'm pretty sure. And because we had a war in the first round. And I think I caught him with a rear naked choke early in the second round, but it was
nice.
It was sheer will, man. I had nothing. I couldn't even give the interview at the end. I was so tired. I couldn't even talk. I mean, I'm proud of it in the sense where like it was a reckless strategy that worked out in the end. It's not something I'd recommend or teach. But at the same time, man, like I am many things. A quitter is not one of them, like I'm sure of that.
A couple more questions. Can you stick around for a little bit or do you got to bounce? I know it's getting.
Oh, I got to go. We're good.
Okay. So Rafael Lovato, one of two Americans to win the Mundials, much like yourself.
Yes.
What's your thoughts on him?
I've known Lovato since we were teenagers. I've had few interactions with him. Like, seems like a good dude. I respect him a lot, man. When he started fighting MMA, I was like, oh, this is not the kind of guy. I didn't think he was going to do well. He did exceptionally well. I think his striking got pretty decent, like pretty good. Man, he's a good athlete. He loves what he does. He's still at it. Like he's a little bit younger than me, but he's still at it, competing. Like I think he fought the last ADCC, like took second if I'm not mistaken, or third, whatever it was, on the podium for sure. Impressive, man, impressive. I like the dude, man. I've never, he's the kind of guy like it's almost like a Marcelo Garcia. Like I don't know, like does everyone not like him? I don't know. He's always been good to me.
Okay, so I mean, I thought there may have been a little bit of a rivalry there because I know Marcelo Nunez is one of your students.
Well, former
student that fought him. At the time, he was one of your students, and it's on his record.
Yeah,
I'm thinking, oh.
Well, I mean, I don't think Lovato will hold it against me for.
Oh, it's a game.
And in hindsight, I'm glad Lovato beat the shit out of him. You can't, like I said, you can't. People say this all the time, right? You can't teach heart, and trust me, I've tried. But some things you can't teach. You can pose in pictures. You can try to look tough. You can act tough. You can pretend you're tough. You can convince yourself you're tough. But real toughness is shown when you got nothing in the tank and things don't go your way and you got to keep fighting. Right? That's how this game is played. Homeboy does not have that. Lovato does. That's why he's a champion.
You also helped train Randy Couture for Brock Lesnar.
Yes.
Dude.
I was like, when I was cornering that fight, I'm like, this is the biggest UFC in history. Like, what the hell am I doing here? I'm cornering the main event. Like, I had no fights then, I believe. I think I was 0-0 at the time. Maybe one fight. I don't remember. But I liked Randy. Randy liked me. He offered me, he asked me to help him for that fight. So we had a camp, and the idea was getting back up and using the guillotine to get back up and maybe hitting the guillotine on the way up. Like, we knew that Brock was going to get on top. Our hope was to get back up and wear him out or get him somewhere along the fence, or Randy put him on the fence and launch him. You know, there's some Shawn Tompkins was in the corner. I remember Shami,
Yeah.
Shawn. I think Ron Frazier was the other one. I can't remember what the third one was. But yeah, that was
huge.
at the time, that was the biggest UFC fight card in history. You know?
Yeah, UFC 100. Yeah. Do you remember at the pre-fight, kind of like the media day? Did you go to the media day, or were you just there with Randy?
I mean, honestly, that whole era is just a blur of fights, cornering, and press conferences. I get them all mixed up. I can't distinguish between any of them.
Right, so let me kind of, I mean, this obviously I'm fishing here. So let me just kind of put the bait on the end of the hook. So this is the event, Joey, where John Jones kind of got big time by Mark Coleman after he tells him that he's a wrestler too. And at the media day, they have a takedown contest, and Coleman smoked him.
I trained with Coleman, man, in his 40s, and he was still a beast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Coleman, Kevin Randleman, when he fought Roger, he came to my gym. He trained with me. Yeah. I had to make some amazing. I trained with some. Now that it's funny because I haven't thought about all this in so long. I appreciate you guys bringing me on because I'm like, oh man, I had some really good memories, man. That was a good, happy era. I didn't win the things I wanted to, but man, what an experience, man. I got to meet all my heroes and train with them and hang out with them and corner them. And
yeah, like Phil Baroni.
Phil Baroni. Man, I cornered all those guys, man. I didn't think I'd ever cornered Phil, but he trained at my gym a whole bunch.
What was that like? What was that like?
He respected me, man. He liked me. Like I try to help him. The problem with Phil is that keeping him consistent, man. Like he was always in trouble, you know. He just like every week there was like a new episode of the Phil Baroni life, you know, and it was just he was gifted, man. He just honestly the problem was keeping him like in the gym. I told him I can help you, but you gotta show up every day. You show up every day, I guarantee. That's what I tell all the fighters to show up. You show up every day, and I guarantee you results. It's that simple.
I got a couple, dude. Your body of work is so impressive, and I'm kind of nerding out here. Give me a little bit more time, man. I saw you yawning. I thought you were unfairly criticized when you cornered Max Rohskopf against Austin Hubbard.
Yeah.
So to kind of set the table, Rohskopf takes the fight last minute, like 5 days notice. So you're only doing medicals.
Yeah.
He's done. He wants to quit in between. You got a minute to convince him to get back in there.
Yeah.
I think the biggest issue was that it was at the apex during the pandemic. So there's no volume other than the corner.
Yeah.
Do you have any regrets in regards to that?
Nope. You know what's funny about that episode? First of all, Max lived with me for 3 years.
Very talented wrestler.
I think very, very highly of Max. I've said this before. I'll say this again. I place Max next to BJ, Jason, George St. Pierre, Khabib. Like that's to me. I've seen this, and I don't blow smoke up people's butt. I've seen this. I've seen Max Rohskopf take down top 5 UFC fighters in his weight class 3 times in a 5-minute round and submit them 3 times within 5 minutes. Top 5 in the UFC. Take them down, submit, take them down, submit, take them down, submit, in 5. Okay? I've seen this over and over and over. Max went to ADCC trials as a blue belt. He didn't even know the rules. He made it to the final. Okay? Kid would have been ADCC champion had he wanted to. He could have won anything. So I think, and I thought very highly of Max, and that was my mistake. I was overconfident about that fight. I mean, perhaps he was overconfident. We took it on short notice, 4 or 5 days, whatever it was. He was not in great shape. I thought he was going to win. I was like, there's no way we're going to lose. You know, I was watching him train what he was doing, practice. I'm like, how do we lose? We don't. We're going to take it. And the next one we'll have like a decent camp, and then he can give us anyone.
Yeah.
That was our, I mean, so
it's your barrier to entry.
I would have wished any harm on Max or thought, like, if I felt Max was in danger, I would have been the first one to call. I would have thrown in the towel if I felt his life were in danger. He was tired. He was having a moment. I tried to wake him up. You know what's funny, man? Like, a friend of mine who sided with me, Joey Varner, he sent me a video.
Jamie Varner?
Yeah, Joey Varner.
Joey, okay.
He was one of the coaches at Extreme Couture, right? He's a very good striker. And he sends me a video of Teddy Atlas cornering Michael Moore for the title in 92, whenever it was. And he's like, get your ass up, go out there. He's yelling at him. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. And then Michael Moore won the world title, and then Teddy Atlas, the genius, right? I mean, if you compare what I was saying to what Teddy Atlas was saying, like, I come across as a pussy.
You do so calm. And you I think the issue is, it's a whole bunch of people that have never been punched in the face that have an opinion.
Amen. It was a bunch of pen pushers, like fucking journalists,
fucking
fanboys. Almost unanimously, the fighters and the coaches sided with me. Almost unanimously, journalists and people have never even trained before were calling me a piece of crap for, like, not listening to my fighter. I'm like, that's my job, is to push you. That's what I do. Okay. I would be the only regret I have, if any, is maybe my choice of words. I don't know. Maybe I could have said something different. I don't know. I as far as like me wanting him to get up, no, absolutely not. I believe in you. I believe you can do it. That's what I do. If I don't believe in you, who the hell's going to believe in you? Huh?
Dude.
If your coach doesn't believe in you, who the fuck is going to believe in you,
dude, man? It was so good, man. It was so good.
I don't understand these people that got mad at me. I don't understand them.
Yeah,
what is it about this sport that you like? Huh? I can't stand this crowd, man. I can't fucking stand these people. We are watching people get elbowed in the eyeball repeatedly. And all of a sudden, me trying to get a guy off the stool is like, oh, what a bad guy you are. Shut the fuck up, man. Like, you hypocrite. You hypocrite. You love the blood. You love the violence. You don't give a shit about anyone's health. You don't give a fuck about anyone in there. Don't act like you care. Playing politically correct,
social,
the good side of history, and go pat yourself on the back, crown yourself with a crown of righteousness, and going, "What a kind person I am. I care about my fellow brothers." Fuck you. That's what I tell these people, man.
100%. All right,
you did it, Mike. You pissed them off.
I get this all the time from people. It's just like these little voices, man. These little midgets, like, complaining and whining and bitching. Like, what the fuck do you really care about that person? Do you really?
Virtue signaling.
Think any of those people care about Max more than I do?
No.
The guy lived with me for 3 years. Who cares? Other than his mother and his siblings, perhaps. Who the fuck loves that kid more than me, huh?
Yeah, I agree.
Come on, man. Shut up, people.
All right, we're gonna talk about another hard part of your life. Leo Viera, you joined his gym with the encouragement of Damian Maia. I heard there that they have kind of a process where they beat you in. Do they have that traditional
jump you into the gang?
No, I was invited on Damian's behalf. Did it at first. Of course, who Terere was. These guys they were like heroes of mine.
Yeah.
I did okay with Terere and Damian, believe it or not. I had just gotten my brown belt. I was a purple. I think I was still a purple belt the first time I trained with him. I hadn't even purple to brown. And I did okay with him. But when I trained with Leo, he just messed me up. Like, no one had ever passed my guard that quickly. Like, whatever this guy's doing, I got to be around him. Like, Leo's something else when it comes to sheer talent. Like, as much as he won, as good as he was, I honestly believe he could have been even better. What a talented human he is, man. Unbelievable.
Awesome. Yeah. Amy Campo. We're going to close with this.
Yeah. I can't take any credit for her other than being this is why. Okay, so when I met Amy, she was like 12 years old and she was beating adults, put it like that. And I remember telling her coach, Eduardo Mori, I go, watch this girl. She's special. Keep your eye on her. Don't let her out of your sight. Train her. Keep her training. she's special. She was beating adults when she was 12. They would put her in super fights when she was like 13, 14, and she's tapping purple belt, brown belts, and she's like a yellow belt, right? So we knew Amy could have done. The only reason she's not a UFC champion is because she probably doesn't care enough to do it, right? She's a phenom. And the only thing I can give myself credit for, which is not a lot, is every time I saw her, I would say, Amy, you have a winning recipe with Eduardo and the Zenith School in Ogden, Utah. Don't change the recipe. And you can ask her, she'll probably tell this. Every time I see her, since she was a little girl, I would say, Amy, you have a winning recipe. Don't change the recipe. You have a winning recipe. Don't change the recipe. And I kept saying that because I believe that. If you have a winning recipe, don't change it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, bro. All these fighters bouncing around looking for external solution to internal problems. You have a winning recipe, stick to it, okay? And I was very confident she was going to blow up, you know? And now I have an interesting fact for you, a little quiz. There are only 2 Americans that have ever won the IBJJF Black Belt World title and the ADCC. Guess who they are?
You and Amy.
And Amy, it's true. Both Zenith. And I'm very proud of that because I think it speaks something as to my philosophy of jiu-jitsu, that jiu-jitsu ought to work everywhere. Gi, no gi in MMA. And if it doesn't work everywhere, as Carlson used to say, I follow Carlson's philosophy here, is that if it doesn't work everywhere, it is useless. And me and Amy are the only 2 Americans with the 2 most prestigious titles in jiu-jitsu, and we both belong to the same team. I'm very, very proud of that.
Well, I mean, and we're wrapping up. Her ADCC run, Elizabeth Clay Moriera, she beats her 3-0. This is 2022, so it's not that far away. She's currently the number 2 ranked girl in the world. Her next match is Gabby Garcia, who she beats 5-0. Gabby Goat, greatest of all time, Gabby Garcia. And her finals is Rafaela Guidas, who just took gold last year, and she beat her 3-2.
Yeah.
Dude, it's like,
and Amy, that speech she gave, I don't know if you listened to that speech, I'll send it to you later. She gave a speech at the end about loyalty. And for 9.5 years, I've been training with the same people in Ogden, Utah. And it's because of them that I'm here. And I go, hats off, Amy. Not only are you a gi world champion, you're a no gi world champion, you are a champion in life for saying that. And I have that printed on my gym's wall, across the wall. It is huge and massive. And I hope that my students read it every day, because that right there is what makes you great, is appreciating the people who bring you up. It's not just, no one winning and celebrating a title by yourself is meaningless. If you don't have the people who carried you with you on their backs throughout your darkest times and your hardest moments, that is a meaningless victory. And Amy is thanking her people when she did that. To me, is like, Amy, you're not only a phenomenal grappler, you're a phenomenal human being. Thank you for being great.
Joey, that was a good one.
Robert, in about 2010, give or take a year, you walked into my home gym of Santa Fe Springs, New Breed Jiu Jitsu. I got to roll with you for a couple of rounds. It's a hell of a lot more fun to talk to you than it is roll with you. So I'm glad we got a chance to do this.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you. Wow. No, I remember being there. So
yeah.
Yes. No, man, it was a pleasure, guys. If you're ever in Vegas, please come by. I apologize if I offended. I do this every podcast, because every podcast I feel like someone writes me mad at me about something I said. So like, I always apologize. Like, I'm sorry for offended. I don't mean to offend, but I would rather speak my mind than, tippy toe around people's feelings. I prefer to deal with honest people and sincere people. And that's how I am, because that's the kind of people that I like.
Robert, dude, absolute class act. I'll see you at the Olympia again this upcoming year, and plan on seeing me stopping by the gym as well. I really appreciate your time, man. Long overdue for this interview. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, guys.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.